Hey there, workforce. Chris here.
Brian here.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about Eureka. It has been the week of Eureka, so don't worry. This isn't like the new work to game content schedule to talk about Eureka every single day. But it's a big topic. And it's something Brian and I
365
have
Eureka
strong
videos per
feelings.
minute.
We planned this before 4.25, and we may have bit off too much. So, Brian, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about. You posted a couple things this week, and you talked about wanting to gamify Eureka. You talked about wanting to add raises, adjustments to the party finder, being able to invite people from outside.
Yeah.
And I still think that list isn't long enough because my concerns with Eureka aren't today's concerns. Because I think Eureka is here to stay, and I think they will make immediate changes to the problems we already see.
Right.
My concerns are, and they were this going into 4.25, will Eureka be something that can outlast Diadem?
Yeah, and that in and of itself, because the first point you make that list wasn't long enough, and you're absolutely right. I've been working in my mind about what I really want to see within Eureka, and the concern is actually still there. Like, what happens when this content is no longer relevant? Is it going to become another Diadem? In the sense that it goes off on its own and it's just kind of pointless.
It's a beautiful world.
It is actually, and when the weather's great, because we had a couple.
Yeah,
comments.
It did rain for like a good 20 minutes on me.
We did have a couple comments. They're like, "Oh, it's just kind of drab," and it's like, yeah, like when the weather is bad, it's bad, but when you get that like rare sunny day and the fields with the flowers and the trees and the way that it's laid out, like it really is kind of that high fantasy setting. It really kind of fits into that, and it really
feels the best of Final Fantasy from a scenery standpoint.
Yeah,
absolutely stunning.
So, like, I bring that up though because the question is the difference maker here is that your relic, relic gear and weapon are tied into this content, where in Diadem there really wasn't. It was just kind of there for gathering and crafting, and it's interesting. There's no gathering that's currently happening in this outside of if you're farming, but you're not really like doing any kind of gathering
constantly. Combat that never ends.
Never ends.
I was in a fate that lasted the full hour and a half that I had to play, and I had to run away from something to leave. Yes. Those are your choices. You can run or you can die. So
go ahead.
I guess I have a couple points that I want to get to because I want your view on them.
Yeah, hit your points because the things that I'm going to bring up, they're complex, and so let's hit your points because I could easily see myself going off.
Well, I think there's a lot of big topics here. So the first one is we are playing through this to get relic weapons, relic gear. They've obviously built this zone to be something that is beautiful and well thought out, so in theory we would enjoy it for a long time.
Right.
I wonder if the system should be adjusted to benefit people that have already unlocked a relic weapon and relic armor for one class, or is this really meant to be an experience that I have to do for every single job the whole way start to finish? Like what is the system that's going to be put in place, or should there be a system that's put in place to benefit people who want to do with multiple jobs? Right now that looks like an incredibly daunting task.
So they did that back in Heaven's Word, and so they introduced the relics originally in 2.0 as just the weapons, and it was a very grind-heavy, multiple-step content process that was meant to actually last the entirety of said game. And so by the time 2.0 finished, the relic weapon was the best weapon you could get in the game, comparable to that of the Savage and the most difficult content that exists in the game right now. And so, again, it's like.
But what if I want to have one for my Black Mage and for my Red Mage?
You can do multiple, and
I have to start both all the way over.
Start both all the way over. Now, as the timeline processed, as the game progressed, those earlier steps became easier to do, and so you could easily, and you saw the same thing in Heaven's Word.
Because I'd already completed it on one class.
Because
it everybody.
Yeah, it just became like they lowered the gathering requirements. So for previously, and so there's a lot of weird and interesting parallels because with Eureka, you can see the dev team is listening to what the vocal maybe minority, I mean, we could debate on that, has said, and the relic steps all started with fate grinding. So we talk about like, hey, you're doing this fates in Eureka. Well, before it was you're doing the same fates you did the level across different zones to gather these rare items that had a random chance of dropping all together. And so that's kind of how those started. And then over time, those got lowered. So you needed so many of those items across all the zones. And then eventually it's like, okay, by the time, if you actually want to go do the relic, start it now for the Heavensward weapon, you only need 1 crystal per each of the new zones, as opposed to having 18 total crystals, and the drop rate is, so
now
much
your level
more.
In this zone is carried now, right? So
Sorry?
your level in Eureka is good for your character, not your job.
Correct. It's character based, so you can switch jobs.
So that might make it a little easier.
Yeah, that's true. That's a natural.
If the higher level things are going to have better drop rates, etc.
Well, and then obviously, like once you hit that like level 17 in Eureka, you get your mount, and so that there's all these other little things that are adding in. That it's like, I could keep doing this. And the thing that about it that's interesting is that you can do it on the job that you like right now, and then just buy the stuff that you want. So it's not like you have to be on your red mage to get the red mage gear. No, I'm just playing the job I want to play, and then I'm getting the items that I'm going to turn in for the gear, etc. So you could, in theory, just farm out like endless amounts of the currency, level yourself up, and then eventually just go cash in and say, here's, I got them all done. So there is actually that benefit. So
I think that's one of the points I wanted to make, is I think this is a good thing that people haven't thought of, that as this content gets longer, it will get easier for you to level up multiple classes, not because it gets easier for everybody, but easier for you specifically because you've unlocked a mount and I haven't. You can farm it on your class that already has their relic and their relic armor. I can't. So if you go off and you get level 20 and you have this relic weapon and relic armor for your main, you have an advantage leveling your alts that I may not, or anybody else may not. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's going to give longevity to this content that people haven't foreseen yet.
Yeah. The weakness of it, though, is that as you've done that, and as long as everybody else that's now apparently level 20 has done that as well, and then you have the new person who's just kind of walking in saying, hey, can I help, or can I do this?
Right.
Well, it's like you're at an immediate disadvantage. Like, okay, well, we're going to get the best from this, but you can't participate in that, and you're not going to get any benefit from it. So that there is this, the concept that, and that's kind of why I said that the game needs kind of this party level sync feature, because we were doing this. I'm level like almost 5 or 5 or 4, something like that. I haven't looked today. But Sparta was like, I'm at 10. It's like, well, because of his, who he is as a person, he's like, I'm going to help out. We're going to have some fun. And that was great. And he enjoyed it. But for somebody who was like, I really am trying to progress here, and getting 1 experience per kill isn't cutting it.
I have mixed feelings. I don't necessarily want level sync, because if level sync goes to the lowest level person, the lowest level content is so much easier that it would be best for me as a level 20 to go find a level 1, level sync with him, and then grind my high level basically rewards off of his level 1 content.
Well,
and so there's the ability to take
you can
advantage
offset that. Like you can kind of account for that. But for the fact is that let's say you are level 20 and I'm level 1. Maybe it's you're like, hey, we can do the lower level content and benefit from it, or we can just not play together. And so I think that's what I see as being more of the problem, because you can adjust some of those rates. You can say that maybe it's not because you're level sync, maybe you're not getting 100%, but you're not getting 1 experience point. You're not getting this and that, and then also there's still a risk. Let's say everything went south, you would level down and I wouldn't. So there is a risk.
I think the counter is that you have to look longer term, in that let's assume that Eureka lasts 10 expansions from now.
Right, yeah.
We're going to go from level 20 being the cap in here to level 25 to level 30 to level 35 and so on and so on and so on. And the problem with that is that now getting to level 20 and getting that first relic weapon, relic armor is literally irrelevant. And so there needs to be more of a catch-up mechanic and less of a level sync, something that will allow those faster levels to go sooner. Because if you just go off and give those to people when the next expansion drops, you're cheapening what people, you listed Sparta as the example. Sparta's putting in crazy hours this week to grind it up to 20. So if they just start giving it out, it says that Sparta's time was worthless.
Yeah,
but
I've never been a fan of that.
If they don't give us an advantage, how do I catch him?
That's kind of like
have 36 hours.
Almost like now we're talking about, are we talking about some kind of jump potion for Eureka? Like, well, here you go, here's this, and you're now level 20 in Eureka, but the cap is 40. You can start grinding here. I think, again, for me, and I stand with it, I believe that it is the solution, because it exists within the fates. The fates will level sync you if you're over it, which is great, because that means you can still participate. Is to bring in level sync, and then that doesn't mean it's got to be a 1-to-1 and a blanket, that it's like, because obviously if you incentivize everybody to go kill the lower level mobs, because it's easy, it's less dangerous, and they're getting amazing rewards from it. Well, yeah, so you obviously have to balance that, but I think long term of it is that people want to play together, and because you're level 20 and let's say the cap is level 30, and I'm now coming into this content because it is longer form content, the fact that we could play together, you could benefit, you could progress. You're not stepping away from your goals for the evening to help with me because I'm coming into the game late.
Right.
That is in and of itself is the right solution, and it's how because again the game is modeled so much off of Final Fantasy XI, Eureka in this case. That's how they solved it in Final Fantasy XI. It became that the goal, and why you hear the term static. You probably hear it in other MMOs, but I know in 14 is that we're all on the same page. We play together. This is the schedule, so that way we're all in sync naturally. 11 eventually was like, there's this huge discrepancy of players who are at cap, and new players are like, who do we play with? Well, how do we benefit? How do we get those players who are at cap? There's no value in them coming.
They actually hurt everybody.
They hurt everybody. They hurt the XP. What's up?
Because if I have all my relics, and all my relic armor for the classes that I play, and I'm level 20, why do I want to keep doing this?
Well, and that's going to be the real question, is that for the next step, because now if those protocells, the proteins, if all of that, you could either do it for multiple jobs, or if that helps you into the next phase, well, why not? Like, if you can sit here and be 20 and you can just farm up all this stuff, and then all of a sudden the next step of it drops and you're like, hey, I'm already at an advantage because I'm in the content and I'm ready to go. Right. Now, at the end of the day, I don't know. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out, because we don't know what the next step is.
I understand the technological reasons, but from a player standpoint, I am frustrated that there is a timer.
Oh, well, okay, so this gets into my first real big problem with the system as a whole. And it's the simple fact that I look at this from a technological perspective and say, and I've been saying this, and I think a lot of us have been saying this, is that break down the walls between the servers in the data center. In fact, we could talk about data center to data center, absolutely. Yeah. But the simple fact is that every zone, we should be able to group up together, see each other, and play together. And they instance the zones to kind of help offset this stuff. But at the end of the day, the step that 14 needs to make is that we're in the open world, we're playing. Eureka needs to be also as a part of that open world. And the reason I think that they went into the instance perspective is it solves that multiple servers coming together to participate in the content. But the problem is that comes with restrictions, the timer, not being able to invite friends, etc. And that is just, in my mind, is like the stopgap between it being in the open world, because literally you should be able to travel there. Yes, you can have kind of different rules of engagement within this area, but there's no reason why we can't invite people from across the data center. We can't do the exact thing that we're doing in Eureka, which is shouting, for all this stuff. But we've lost. And
and other games already have this.
Is a problem.
I mean, to bring the other Titan in the room in, World of Warcraft already has this. For World Quests and stuff, you're literally already synced across servers, and it's pulling people in, pulling people out. If you're in a party of 2 and I'm in a party of 3, and you break your party up so we can join you, it might be jumping us into your version of the instance. So if we're already in the middle of killing the boss, I may see his life go up because I'm now fighting a different instance of that same boss, and which is a little weird, because when you go back the other way, sometimes your boss is still there. But for the most part, it's really easy to jump in and out of parties. It actually has a little pop-up that asks you, like, hey, you're about to fight this big boss, and it's not meant to be killed by a party of 8 or less. So would you like to look for an alliance? And you click yes. and then it puts you in an alliance with other parties.
Right.
It's crazy.
And that's one of the things that this current system doesn't do.
It does not, even in a little bit.
The counter argument is that there's a lot of people who enjoy the shouts, the asking. They say, like, if you scroll through the salt, but you get to people asking and setting up that expectation as opposed to being auto merged into an alliance, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, we were hoping, you know, that you guys would be on the same page, that we're going to do this for an hour, and you're like, well, we were only going to do this for 5 minutes, you know. And that in and of itself is like, I get the counter argument to it, because there is value in it. More that, you know, one of the things that matchmaking does do is it kind of just makes you not have to speak up. And again, I think there's the PS4 issue where, you know, if you don't have a keyboard, it's automatically a little bit more challenging. I think it's going to de-incentivize you to do it, or you're going to get a keyboard. One of two things. You're either going to have to spend money, or you're just going to ignore this. But outside of that, matchmaking, one of the things that a lot of people, especially coming from 11, have always said is that, well, you know, it doesn't have that same kind of, you know, camaraderie that we're all in this together, because, you know, there are stories that come from 11 where, like, you would recognize somebody's name because they were either awesome and you really enjoyed because you were talking with them, or they were horrible and you're like, you never want to play with this guy because this person is just either a bad player or just not, you know, pleasant to play with or work around. Matchmaking kind of gets rid of that, and it just puts you up together. And then the downside for that is that sometimes you get a real bad egg, and it's, you know, you see and hear all these horror stories when it relates to it. So there is always going to be a pro and con. There's going to be this balance between, you know, people communicating and grouping up kind of old school style, or the system kind of matching you in with, you know, a group, and it's either good or bad or neutral, you know. But with that still in place, that those systems, I think, the lack of them in this content is jarring, because the whole game trains you up to that point. So it's kind of like,
and this favors 11 players. So all the people who are loving this content are going to be mad about changes because they're getting their chance to play 11 again.
The thing that I find, I compare this into some of the comments on some of those videos that you were talking about, is that I kind of look at this as like when they made the change to Bard and Machinist, to where, like, in the level 50 range, all of a sudden they had to stand still and have a cast bar, where the entire game up to that point that didn't exist. And so all of a sudden, like, you're playing a game and you're 90% through it, and then the last 10%, it's like, okay,
well, that's how Eureka feels to me. I play the game one way, and then they just jacked with it just to do it.
And that's kind of, that brings me to the other thing. Is like, the other big point is, like, this kind of content should exist throughout, and that, again, open world. Like, the fact is that if we wanted to, players should be able to get together and grind and level up on, you know, these enemies in the open world in any zone they wish, and have the same opportunities to either level you know, a job, and even maybe earn the proteins, even at a lower reduced rate. You know, why is this content only regulated to this one instance zone, as opposed to just being overall, and then starting it at the beginning, so that it becomes this alternate leveling process that you can go do dungeons, you can do this, you can do this. You know, when we talk about the concept of the theme park, is that you can have all these things to choose from. But what they've created with this, with this content, is that they created the theme park, and then as soon as you've ridden every ride in the theme park, then they say, hey, here's this other theme park, and it's a water park. Did you bring your swimsuit? And you're like, well, no, I didn't know that this existed, and now it, you know, it did. And so I'm just thinking that there's things that I like about it, especially as an 11 player. There's things that I obviously have stated that I want different, but the thing that I want is that it just is that it's so shocking to anybody who, especially even old 11 players, like, it's like, okay, well, you know, one of the key differences, I was talking with Jelly about this, is that in 11 the battle system was so slow. What you would do while you're leveling, you know, in a camp, somebody would go pull a monster, and, you know, you would stand pretty much where you are because it's safe, you know, that way. But the battle system was so slow, the only option was to communicate with people. So you would type and talk, or you know, watch a show or something. But in 14, the battle system is so much faster. You know, as you said, that you were in the same, you know, you're just constantly in this one fight. Like, all the kinds of crazy things are coming on. There is no real downtime. And and so there is still that jarring aspect from people who are expecting, you know, it's like, this isn't 11. This is a 14 version of, you know, the old school style of camp, you know, camp and pull and stand there for hours and do the same thing over and over and over again.
So really from there, I guess my biggest question, this is something we talked about several times, is we've talked about how progression raid gear has its place, and then how crafters kind of take this back seat.
Mm-hmm.
Where's Eureka fall in that? Is it also a back seat? Is it this step in between? Because I know where it falls relative to today's Savage gear, but what does that look like patch over patch? What does that look like when 4.3 drops? What does that look like when 4.4 drops? Is it always going to be relevant in between? Is it always going to be relevant on patch day? I don't know where that should fit.
Yeah, I'm gonna bet that we'll see on the odd number patch. I mean, the kind of the mid tier patch between the cycles, that we'll see the continued expansion of Eureka, you know, and then the relics. I think the head content would be obviously the Savage for the longest time, and eventually, just like before, this will conclude with having either the most epic gear or gear that's on par with the ultimate Savage content. So it's going to be kind of where they weave it in, right? Like, you know, that's just how I see it functioning.
And I guess from there, I would think that it needs to expand in levels. I would think that you're going to have to continue adding harder and harder levels. So we typically only get a 10 level boost per expansion, but Eureka is going to be on this weird trend where we're going to go from 20 now to maybe at 4.3.5 we get 25, and then at 4.4.5 we get 30, and so we're going to continue getting this. I think that's one of my bigger concerns, is how they can have a lot of variety.
Yeah, that seems fair, and like how you're thinking at it with maybe a 5 level step in your elemental level, being how long it takes to get one of those, especially as you let, like, oh yeah, level 2, and then it's like, man, it's taking a long time for level 3, and then, whew, okay, oh man, I finally made it to 4, you know, and then it's like, so people are really working, you know, the system to really try to get that up there. I think 5 levels would, and that also adds that value to that, to go back, like, hey, now you can get even stronger. The question for me, for you, is that, you know, outside of that, do you think they're gonna expand either on the zone or add in other connected areas, or is it just gonna add in more difficult, you know, monsters? Because if they're going to increase that level cap and you're always just in the same area, that's gonna get dull real quick, in my opinion.
I would hope they would expand the zone, and you would just kind of like, there would be like these giant gates that the story would give us a reason why, you know, there's this fight within Eureka, and we're constantly able to push further and further because we fought so hard during 4.2.5. Now at 4.3.5, you're able to fight at the next 100 feet, right? Like trenches. I don't know that they planned for that, because if they didn't, we're probably stuck with the Eureka we have. But I haven't tried running as far north as you can, so I don't know how far it goes. Maybe it does get really intense.
Well, it's that the enemies are tough, but it's all about that. Like, when you get hit for 70,000 damage because the monster is like, you know, 10 levels higher than you, then you're like, yeah.
I would love to see you having to click that wheel a lot more often. I would love you having to kind of interact with that, and there's this constant changing strategy.
I do feel like I click that wheel quite a lot whenever things kind of get chaotic, because I've seen it to where a couple different element types of enemies have kind of come into the camp, and based off of kind of what the situation is, I have been using the wheel. I'm not that great at it, and I think visually I'm gonna have to play around with where it's laid out on my system. What do you say?
I think based on the preview, I wanted to use it more. I think based on the preview, I haven't bound it, and so that tells me if I haven't bound it, I'm not having to use it that much. I wanted to get to the point where I had to, like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to macro this because it's so crazy, and it just hasn't been.
The problem I have, I think, from a controller perspective, and that's something I think I need to spend more time with, is that it is a little bit inconvenient to jump over to it from a controller, and maybe being able to put a macro or something where I can easily just have it switch, right?
Rotate right, rotate left.
Right, rotate left. It's like, that would be way more convenient than how I'm like, because I have to press back, it selects it, then I have to press the right button, then I have to cancel out of that with B. It's just right now not necessarily the ideal. Yeah. Obviously, I can see what you mean from a keyboard and mouse perspective, because yeah, switch this. From a tank perspective and a healer, I've seen mostly that the tanks are usually in defensive stack, and then the DPS are in an offensive stack, and then the healer, depending on how the tank is handling it, will either be an offensive or defensive.
And I don't
stack.
mean it as a complaint, because I haven't made it to level 20. So maybe at level 20, I'm like, oh my god, the wheel is just too much.
Well, you can only spin it so many times before, because you do have a cooldown. You have so many points that you can change it to. So, obviously, if they had it like that, who knows? Like I'm just really, really excited. And I was actually, one of the things I was excited about with kind of the wheel is just how difficult it is to get the Magicite and how it's kind of integrated into the quests themselves. I thought it was like, oh, you level up and boom, you level up, and then at some point you're going to be able to fill out a huge chunk of this. And it's like, no, you have to kind of decide whether, but I don't know yet if there's a right answer, in the sense that, why would you put it all in one and not in one? I'm assuming right now you only get 5. Like, why wouldn't you just put them all in the same, and that way you're either really strong or really strong in defense or really strong offense? Or I guess maybe that
drop a controversial topic into a controversial topic, like a weird Inception type thing, but it really made me want a damage meter, because I wanted to understand the difference between what I was doing based on what the wheel was, and I also wanted to see my damage taken. What amount of damage came out of the monster's face and what amount actually hit my health bar. And so I can better see, like, oh my god, this guy's really
mitigated because
me,
of
and I mitigated X. And the alternative is, he's got X amount of life and I took it down what percentage faster. Not being able to track any of that, the wheel feels a little more arbitrary to me than it probably is. It's probably doing something, I just can't see it.
It would help. It'd be really cool to see it. Again, like, this system could benefit from stats at the end of the day. How many enemies did you kill? Like when you at the beginning,
when
you
my
said,
timer runs out.
Yeah, I want to gamify it a little bit more. How many did I do this, and then what's the total damage, and what's my total defensive, and what's my
to put dailies in it, but like an hourly quest that pops up that says kill X number of this, and maybe it's just like leaves for gathering. So it's kill this many and you'll get a reward, and then there's tiers above that. And so it's like, well, if you can kill 10 in 3 minutes, awesome. But if you could kill 15, and then it's like, if you could kill 20, it's like, well, how am I going to kill 20? There aren't in. Then you realize, okay, well, if I was level 20 and I were to go take on level 1 mobs, I could probably do that. And that would give me this unique reward. Like, maybe I would get no experience, but I would be able to get
and if you don't need the experience, then give me the rewards,
the items.
Right. And that ends up that is the, like, kind of the core thing, is that the shock factor I was bringing up earlier. Okay, like it's a whole different style. Like, there's no real, the objective is to find a good safe camp, team up with other parties and farm the NMs. And I love that you you trigger the NMs, because at first, like, it was like, oh, they're real rare, but then it's like, no, let's all get together and attack, and then you're going to see those pop up way more frequently because of it. The chain system is a good system. It's exciting to see,
and they're not fates. That's why they're called something different.
Right.
They are not fates. They're triggered by us. They're something. I understand why there's enough of a delineation there that they felt the need to call them something different.
Notorious monster battle. I would like to see, but like, you're right. Like why not a daily quest or an hourly quest or these type of things to, they don't. I mean, again, not to where you're running around the zone, because if that's the idea is this kind of old school camp style. Why not, again, gamify it a little bit more and add a little bit of, objectives that can kind of pop up and kind of say.
Maybe it could be done through achievements and the rewards are just glamour.
Why not?
It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Maybe it's if you do X amount of these achievements, then you start unlocking relic glamour from previous relics. So that your new relic could look like the old relics, because you are doing so well at the Eureka content. It doesn't have to be something crazy.
I'd love to know what people think in the comments below on that, because that actually sounds great, because it's like, oh, the old relics.
Especially for people that miss those.
Right, and then don't want to take the time to do it. But then the question is that what would that achievement have to look like in order not to sit here and devalue the effort that others have made into that? Because you can go get those other relics. Like, if you wanted the glamour,
and they got an achievement for that. So it's a separate achievement.
Right. It would be interesting though. I like the idea. I would just think that the achievements would have to be something worthy of the word achievement in this case. And we're supposedly getting an achievement revamp in 4.3. And so, much like what we've kind of talked about in the past and the ideas that you've expressed,
a lot more depth.
I don't know. Like, I'm hoping that it's what we're hoping for, like with the glamour system. That's you know, worst case scenario is it's like they've made minor improvements to it, and then it's like, well, it's still just there.
They need to add a lot of depth. It needs a lot more. The game needs to feel overwhelmingly big again, and not just because they added a new type of currency.
Yeah, I'm hoping the new achievement system would be something like the Wondrous Tales. What it did, it just incentivized all this really cool old content to make it fun to go and do that again. Be like, hey, oh man, did you know if you did this, you can get this? It's like, oh, I did not. Let me do that.
and within, and not to, I don't know how we're doing on time, but like my last point of this is kind of, where does this mean the 4.0 series is? Because from my perspective, I think the 4.25 was a bit of a letdown.
Okay.
The launch was relatively smooth. There were some technical issues, but for the most part, I've been pretty happy with Stormblood. 4.1 was kind of underwhelming. And then I basically sat out a chunk of time. And now 4.2 obviously should have had Eureka in it. It didn't.
Well,
and so
even
now we're here
Eureka was planned for 4.15. And that's where, so like you laugh, but that's where a lot of people are sensing this frustration behind it.
This just feels a little bit like Nintendo.
You know, it's
They're
that
just behind the ball.
You know, it's like, well, you know, if we had to wait so much longer, like, what did we really gain from it? Because you know, people fall in that they enjoy it or they just can't stand it. And people, I feel like I kind of fall in between. Like, okay, I'm gonna keep working on it. I like that there's a lot of different progressions, but I need a lot of quality of life to really make it work for me. Because you saw in the video, like I'm the party leader. I'm healing, and I'm trying to find a replacement member, and I'm trying to monitor this, and I'm also jumping into that other screen, and then also trying to heal and stay alive. And it's like, oh God, let me just say my party is open. We're at 6. We're looking for DPSs within this level range. Let me just say, if you meet that requirement, like, and somebody can come in and be like, oh, I see that here's a party I can join, here's a party I can join.
The map could use more little names of places so that people kind of knew things. There could be a lot of things that just made it easier to communicate if they're not going to bring Party Finder into Eureka. Yeah, I think overall, I'm a little disappointed at the pacing of the 4.0 series because they said it's going to run longer, and it feels like, was it going to run longer because you took the same amount of content and spread it out? Or is it going to run longer because you bit off more than you can chew? I don't really know where they're at. I don't fall on one side or the other. I don't like the game right now. But I guess the difference between me and somebody that's going to go out and just complain and then bail, it's not because I don't want to.
Right.
The game is beautiful, and the game has a lot of wonderfully inventive things, and the developers have a lot of care for the game, and it's a beautiful community, and I love so much about it. So the fact that I don't like the state it's in right now is frustrating because I want to like the 4.0 series more. Yeah,
I think for me, with looking at 4.0 and having been playing this game for a long time, what's really, has me excited is I'm really enjoying the story, and I think that 4.2 ended off on a really cool cliffhanger, and I'm not going to spoil it for anybody who hasn't made it there that far yet. And that in and of itself, I think, is really enjoyable. My critique of it as kind of a product so far is it feels very samey. It feels very comparable to Heavensward in terms of content and pacing. So 3.1 Diadem, well, we didn't get it in, then, but they were kind of trying to target for that kind of time period. It feels that they've added a lot, and it's not this. It's kind of funny. Like when you're coming into this game right now, you could be easily overwhelmed by just the sheer amount of content. When you stay pretty current on the content, you can end up looking at it and say, okay, this is what I expect, and this is what they deliver. As a player, I am personally just looking to be surprised a little bit more with some kind of the updates, and I felt like they did that a lot in the earlier parts, and we haven't seen that equivalent yet. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I am finding a lot of joy in leveling up the jobs. Right.
And this is giving me time to go focus on botany and mining, and you're finishing out a lot of your battle classes.
Yeah,
and so
exactly.
I am finding things to enjoy about the game, but they are not current content.
And with that being said, it's that I just the critiques are funny complaints, because I remember when this game was such in the 1.0 state that it was in, and it's like sometimes it's like, I can't believe I'm complaining about maybe this one little thing, because I would have killed for that one little thing back when this game originally launched, and they gave it to me. But now it's at a point where I think we need to see, some real, maybe some risks is probably the way to take it. And I can get that they might be risk averse because of the risks they took with 1.0, and then leading that into in the 4 series right now. But again, like when I look at the content kind of that was delivered for Heavensward, and then that is for Stormblood, I just wonder. I'm like, okay, well, the game needs, for me as a player who's really current, like something really interesting that and I don't know what that is. Now I've said before, like open world content. They need to take the systems just taking the systems that they have and gamifying it and bringing it in as options as a player to participate in at higher levels would be interesting to offer different paths for rewards. I would right now, I think the biggest thing I would love to see is stats. Now you say damage meter, but I'm fine with it not being in real time. I would love to know these kind of stats and have these kind of things tracked and be able to, because I love stats. I'm a huge baseball nerd. And so
as I log out, tell me
how many did I do? Like, I killed all this and I did this. And then it's like, I did more. I did the
best on.
Yeah. And that's what I would love to see that, to see kind of my career, as I would kind of put it, both in PvP and in PvE, that just to see like interesting little things, and then to have those stats then help maybe drive into the achievement piece in the system to inform more user created goals. Because one of the things that is interesting about Eureka is it's very sandboxy in its design. And there really isn't a lot of sandbox design within the overall world of Final Fantasy.
So they haven't prepared us for it. I don't know how to deal with this.
You don't, so as a previous 11 player,
trained for this.
I'm trained, and that's why I was able to, I think, accept the flaws of 1.0 so easily, because it's like, wow, it's actually better than 11 in some areas. Oh, this is cool. Maybe we'll get to see even more progress. But for somebody like you, and that's why when I was sitting down and before you came on, we're like, oh, Chris is going to hate this.
And I had already gotten text messages from some of my friends that play multiple MMOs, and then the one that did it was, I was on my way back and I was trying to avoid reading any of them, and I was trying to avoid reaching out to you or Jelly or anybody else, and I was staying off Discord, and then my friend Zach called, and he's somebody that I play WoW with, and I was like, perfect, let's just not talk about Final Fantasy. I'm streaming it later today. I don't want any spoilers. And he won't know anything about it because he played 14 way back, but he doesn't play currently. Yeah. And I go, hey, buddy, what's up? And he's like, hey, I was wondering if you were going to play any WoW tonight. And I was like, maybe, but today's patch day for Final Fantasy. And he goes, oh, yeah, today's 4.25. You guys got Eureka. I've already heard so much about it. And then he goes on, and I'm like, why do you know about this? And he just totally spoiled it for me, which took a lot of wind out of the sails, because it is a beautiful zone. Yeah. I like a lot about it. The first time I pulled, and then there was another pull, I was like, oh wow, this is going to be so neat. But then there was no big combo numbers popping up like I don't know, like some old PlayStation games or something that was 200, because at 30 it resets, and I don't think it should. I think it should just keep going higher and higher. Now maybe the perk stops at 30, but I think it should be after 30 it should be okay, you're technically at 1.
How many?
And it goes to 30 at 1 and goes to 30. But how many chains did I get total? So if I did 6 chains of 30 in a row, somewhere there should be a 180 popping up, and I should just be so excited. And so after 40 minutes, I was like,
going, and you just want to and then it's we're still here for an hour.
Yeah, I want a pre-made. I want somebody I can yell at when they mess up my combo.
Who got the highest for the week? Who got what party got the highest, or what's people that's the gamification and the stats that I would just love to see baked into this content, because then this PvE has maybe some sense of competition, some sense of, and even if and at some point to incentivize rewards are nice, but imagine being able to sit here and get your mendacity for the week every time you hit chain 100. Chain 100, here's 50 mendacity, or whatever the current tombstone is. You're like, this is great. This is what's driving.
Or here's crops for your chocobo that people complain about not having access to housing. All right, fine. Here's a way to get crops.
That
do 100 kills in Eureka.
That would be so funny if that's how they
just messing with us.
That would
like,
be the
the world rains turnips. What are turnips? Oh, they're an alternative crop for your.
That would be the ultimate troll. Is this right here? Yoshi P. In order to get when they open up new housing plots, you have to complete some kind of Eureka challenge to be eligible to purchase. And be okay.
I hear you got a chain of 150. That's exactly the kind of landlord we're looking for in this exclusive ward. There's a new ward. The only way to get a house in it is a Eureka chain.
There is an interesting psychological thing before we kind of wrap up this topic. I could talk about this all day, and it's kind of been the week of Eureka because it introduces a lot of interesting concepts. But there's an interesting psychological component that you see within the player base, both being like completely upset. And I was disappointed when I first played it. Now I've kind of moved into the acceptance stage, and maybe I'll be excited about it in the future. But essentially, where you just kind of have you have a couple different camps, and I was talking with this one guy on in our comments. I'm not going to mention his name because he's like, hey, I'm unsubbing you guys because people in your comment section don't like this, and I love this Eureka content. And we had a good conversation. I was like, dude, I respect that. No hard feelings. Do what you're gonna do. But at the end of the day, there's gonna be people feel attacked.
I get why people
and it's not
love
just
this
one person.
I'm just not that person. I get why people love it.
Yeah.
I do.
Well,
and I 100% am glad that the devs have something for those people.
What I'm seeing is, and what I'm not enjoying about it, what I'm hoping that as the community can come together and say, hey, this is cool stuff and I'm glad you enjoy it. It's just not my cup of tea. Or, hey, this is cool stuff and I'm really enjoying it and you're not. That's cool too. There's other stuff that we can enjoy
PvP,
together.
Like Palace of the Dead,
and it's that
Savage.
It's not everybody. It feels like maybe it's the kind of the vocal minority on both sides of the thing is that people feel like they have to defend Eureka because they enjoy it. And anybody who doesn't enjoy it, it's feel like attacked. And same thing on the other side. People who don't enjoy it feel like they have to defend the reasons why they don't enjoy it because, and then they're attacking people who enjoy it. Like, how could you like this? They should just delete it. And so it's like you have these two vocal minority of camps. And I think for the mass majority of players, we just want to sit back. We want to have fun. I have a long list of stuff that I want to see within this specific content, but in the overall game that we've been waiting around for. Like we talked about level sync. I want to see that just throughout the whole freaking game, and then Yoshi P said he liked the idea and that it was coming, and that was at our last fan fest and it's still not here.
Well,
and then
it'll come with the app.
Well, and then Eureka, with the phone app and the mods, the mod support.
And the mod support.
But as it goes, that's one of the things that it is unfortunate. When the topic is divisive, and there are people who feel like they have to defend it or feel like they have to attack it.
Oh, just because I don't like it doesn't mean you can't. I as a matter of fact, from the aspect of this channel, in my world, it would be perfect if this was Brian's favorite thing ever and then my least favorite thing ever, just so that we could talk about it. But we don't. Sometimes we happen to both like the same thing, and sometimes we happen to both dislike the same thing.
Right.
But I'm glad there are people that are diving into this totally and completely. I think there are people who absolutely hate it, and rather than say, oh, we should leave this divide, are there things we can do that would not hurt the group that loves it, but would kind of bring a few people more from this camp where they could actually find some joy in it.
Can they transition 11 players that are still playing 11 into this kind of content? And the thing is that I think they can, but they still have to play through the whole game right now to be able to take part.
Oh yeah.
It's like, okay, come on, hey, you want to play 14's version of 11? I got 3 expansions for you.
Or by level and story boost.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. But you still then have to play through Stormblood. But I think for me to end on a positive note, one of the things I think is that it's clear is that the developers are listening, and you can see this in how they run the Notorious Monster Fates. They bring in mechanics. I have heard more oh my gosh, that fate is so hard because there are mechanics, and it's really cool to see because of the level of difficulty. Players are learning that they have to learn and adapt because we did number, and if you don't kill the little void thing, it's going to spawn a chimera, and then he's just going to wreck you with just constant lightning. And it's the community has constantly said they wanted more challenging from fates. more, something
and
more
something new
difficult.
and different. And this is different.
And
so
it
it is absolutely everything we asked for. It just may not have been delivered the way we expected.
Well, not everybody expected, etc. So, I think for me, I could go from my kind of like neutral position into a favorable position with the quality of life. Like those are the top 5. I could probably think of another.
I don't
30.
even need to wait for 4.3. The number of changes I need to go from not wanting to do this ever again to I hope my wife has to work late tonight so that I can get more Eureka in. It is a small patch.
Yeah,
it is not a big list.
Outside of like obviously inviting your friends, like some of that stuff is real technical, but I think level sync already exists because it's a part of the whole Fate system. That system exists. The gamification exists. All these little things like exist. That kind of the ones that exist I think would take the least amount of time. Those I think would make me the most immediately happy. Party Finder being one of them. It could be a huge technical hurdle. I could be saying, yeah, just add Party Finder, and then it's like, I've lived in that world. People are like, oh, that should be easy, and it's like, what you actually asked for is going to take 1,000 man hours. It's like, okay, do we prioritize this over something else? And that's management. And that's development management 101, where you're just like, okay, well. What we might perceive to be easy could be really difficult. But for the easy things, the quick wins, I know they're listening. I've posted my thoughts up on the official forums and on Reddit, and hopefully we're going to keep seeing more effort, more support in that area, because I don't think it's going to take much for me, like you going from not liking it to giving it some time and attention.
It's a small list. It could come out any Tuesday. I expect it at any time.
Yeah. All right. Cool. But that's those are my thoughts. Chris, you said you had a small list. I'm actually interested in what
we went over everything on my list in some part. The things that would push me over is I need to be able to be invited in if you're already in. I need there to be some easy way to track how my progress in there is doing. Some small step towards gamifying it, but it doesn't have to be a whole quest system. Just something that says, hey, tell me what the vendors are asking for, how you're doing. I need the ability to be the raise, that when you die, it is absolutely a bummer. And that's about it.
That re-raise could be a literal
the invite in,
and it could have, you could make it like where it's like, okay, you can only do this once every 3 hours. Like, it doesn't have to be like, or heck, even 24. Somebody's like, make it a 24-hour kind of cooldown.
Or it resets every time you clear a notorious monster.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Tie it to the content. So as long as you're clearing content, we know you're going to die sometimes. But if you're dying and you're not clearing content, you're going to walk.
This system is going to lay you flat on the ground.
A self-raise once every notorious monster. You can build up to 5. You keep the 5 between play sessions. That seems easy enough, but honestly, I would start liking it immediately if they would just bring Party Finder and the invite in, the raise being the third thing. I would like it. Gamify would make it that addicting thing, that thing where I joke about, wow, well, I'm not going to get anything else done now. So I would love for that to be my problem. I could like it plenty with just those first couple things, but if they could gamify it, this could really be a new addiction for me.
One of the things that we didn't even we kind of teased around about the achievement system changes and things like that could also end up helping to gamify it a little bit more as well.
It could be done a lot of different ways. And Square always has the ability to slightly surprise me in how they take their take on things. So I don't need them to do what I think it should be done. I just want to put the rough idea out there and then them just go do it their unique way, which is I think what we do as a community. We put these rough ideas out there and then they take unique interpretations of what we all ask for.
That's a good point.
I think that's it for me.
Yeah, that's it for me as well. Like, I personally, like, so for anybody who's like, hey, what am I playing? Like, I'm gonna keep investing in Eureka. I'm one of the things I really, I skipped over the last 2 relic steps, and I think that this is as long as I'm able to get groups. If I have to go into the content and I can't do anything but solo, that's going to deflate my interest. But right now, I haven't run into that problem, and it's only week 1, so the question that everybody's debating is like, you know, is there at some point where you go in and then it's like, you know, it's just there's no.
I'll play it to get my
value.
Black Mage set.
Yeah,
I'll play it.
And it's really like and the fact that you can dye it and it's got pentamelds, meaning 5 Matera slots on each piece of gear. Ooh, this is going to be interesting.
Could be.
So anyway, that's it for me, Chris.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brian. Thank you guys for watching. Definitely let us know in the comments below what you guys think should be changed or should not be changed. If you love the content, absolutely, there's a room for both sides on this argument. I get why people fall in either camp. So definitely let us know, and we'll try not to just keep posting Eureka videos constantly, but if they make changes, stay tuned. We'll talk about them here.
Absolutely.
This has been Chris with Work to Game.
And Brian.
Thanks for watching.